name's John. I sit on the board of a condo corporation in downtown Kitchener. And today I'm here to tell you about some equipment we put in a few years ago that we found really helpful. I'm here in one of the many mechanical rooms that we have in our building. And an issue that we've had from time to time, which I can't imagine every other building hasn't had from time to time, is floods. Flooding is one of the largest, most common insurance claim issues, and it happens all the time, no matter what you do. The equipment that we found lets us know when there's water on the floor instantly. Our mechanical rooms get checked once a day, 6 days a week by staff. But if a pipe bursts or something breaks and we have water flooding onto the floor, it could be hours, and if it happens to be on a Saturday afternoon, it could be a day and a half before anybody finds it. So having a way to know immediately that there's water on the floor, we can mitigate the issue and get at it right away. It often makes the difference between a relatively small cleanup and potentially tens, or depending on where it is, even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. So what I have here is a little puck, if you like, that's about 3 inches square and 1 inch thick. And on the back of it, there are a couple of metal contacts. And what this does is, if it gets wet, it sends a text or email alert to anybody we've set up in the system, which in our case is board members, maintenance staff, and our property manager. And we've spread a bunch of these around our building in mechanical rooms and washrooms and anywhere where we're concerned that there might be a flood, because in a building like this, there will be floods. What I'm going to do is go into the mechanical room and show you one of the flood monitors that we have on the floor. Now these, unlike our washrooms, these are loose. We move them around sometimes if we've got recent work that we want to make sure holds, or we have an area that's been a particular problem from a flooding perspective or a leaking perspective. We end up moving them around a little bit. This also, having them loose on the floor also means that if plumbers are in working, they can actually pick them up and put them out of the way so that they don't create false alarms when water gets on the floor during sort of normal plumbing work. Now we're just gonna wander into the mechanical room, and here's one of the pucks on the floor. So you can see it's just loose. It can be picked up and moved around to whatever area makes sense. And we have a couple of these in each of our major mechanical rooms, water room, and a few more spread around washrooms and janitorial areas where there's sinks. Unlike our mechanical rooms where the flood sensors are just loose on the floor, in our washrooms, we actually mount them vertically against a wall or a baseboard. They can be fixed here and they work just as well, but in this case, they avoid being pushed around or moved because it's a busier area and the floors are frequently cleaned. So in order for these flood monitors to work, they're battery powered, they're wireless. They use a couple of AA batteries that last for 2 or 3 years, so there's very little maintenance. But in order for them to connect to the outside world and send us alerts if there's a problem or a flood, there's 2 base stations in our building. The base stations will each handle about 50 sensors, but in a large building, you may need more than one just to cover the geographical area. We have a very tall 6-story building, so we have 2 of these base stations. And I'm gonna flip the camera around and let you have a look at what they look like. So here we are back in another one of our mechanical rooms, and the reason I brought you here is to show you this. So this unit is one of the base stations. Now it needs to be plugged into 110 volt power, and it communicates via a cell signal, and it connects wirelessly to all the sensors we have in the building. Essentially, it's also got batteries in it so that if the power goes off, it will continue to operate, and we would continue to be advised of any flooding that happens. It also will let us know that the power is off in the building. And I believe each one will monitor as many as 50 sensors, which is far more than what we have. We've got a dozen or so flood monitors and 2 that monitor flow through 2 of our water meters. Now, besides the flood monitoring pucks that sit on the floor, it's a little bit difficult to see, but right down in there, there's a big gray box that's strapped around a water meter. Now, this particular water meter is for the water that feeds our cooling tower, which is a significant use of water in the summer. There's another identical one downstairs in the basement on the main water meter that comes into the building. Now, these units monitor minute by minute the flow through the water meters. There's nothing complicated. There's a rubber strap that they strap around the side. There's a couple of D-cell batteries in them that last for 2 or 3 years. There's no wiring, no plumbing needed, so they're really easy to install and add. For this particular one, it's identified a couple of times when something broke inside of our cooling tower, and although there was no flooding in the building, when this happened, the software alerts us to any unusual water use. And it highlighted within an hour or two that there was an exceptional amount of water being used by the cooling tower. By investigating it, we were able to find the fault and fix it fairly promptly. If it wasn't for that, the potential for this leak to have continued on for days, weeks, or even months was a real possibility. So although there was no flooding involved, we could have wasted thousands and thousands of dollars worth of water. So this saved us for that. Now, although the flood monitors that I've talked mostly about today have really been a wonderful help, they've really saved us in a number of cases where we had floods that would have gone on for hours, and in a couple of cases for a day and a half before they would have been discovered, that we discovered instantly. The original reason for implementing this equipment was to be able to monitor the flow of water into our building on a minute-by-minute basis. And the reason for that was that we felt that our water bills seemed to be a lot higher than we thought they should be. We did some investigation and we compared sort of a year's worth of water use at the time with what the building used when it was first fully occupied. And we found that we were using about 25% more water than we had when the building was new. And we anticipated that this was probably mostly due to leaking toilets or possibly leaking taps, or maybe leaks that we hadn't identified that were ongoing. We had some ideas about things we could do to try to mitigate that, but we had no way of knowing if we were successful or not, short of waiting a year and looking at another year's worth of data. What the Alert Labs flow monitors allowed us to do is look at exactly how much water we were using every day, every hour, every minute, right down to a sub-minute level. Their software also looks at that and analyzes that and comes up with an estimate for how much of that water might be leaking. So it looks at normal usage patterns compared to something that's happening today that might be a little different. It knows that in a residential building, generally between 1 in the morning and 5 in the morning, there's probably almost no, or there will be times in there between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. that there's no flow at all because everybody's asleep, nobody's having a shower, nobody's doing their dishes, nobody's doing laundry. So it uses all of that information to estimate how much water we're wasting. By doing this, we can see roughly how much we're wasting. We can take certain steps to mitigate it, and then we can see how effective we've been. And here in my office, we're going to look at the live Alert Labs dashboard on my computer, and I'm going to show you some data from a couple of years ago when we did a leak mitigation program that we can see clearly had an impact. So this chart on the screen shows water consumption over an 8-month period in 2022. The blue bars are daily water consumption, and you can see slightly off to the right, the consumption goes up quite a bit. That's because we have a cooling tower that uses a great deal of water during the summertime, and it peaks up and down based on how hot it is out. Now the red portion at the bottom, that's what the software, the Alert Lab software that's been monitoring our water consumption through our main water meter by the minute, has figured out that that's probably water that's being wasted. It's probably going down the drain. And on the left, you can see there's a great deal of water going down the drain. We found some issues with some toilets. We made some repairs. And then we went to a program in the spring where we essentially, during our annual fire inspections, we also inspected plumbing within all of the units in the building. And where we found leaky toilets or leaky taps, we advised the owners that they had a month to fix things. And then after that, if they were still leaking, we would come in and fix them and send them a bill. So you can see some peaks over here. It was interesting. This peak here,
after the inspection, the leaks went up a lot. I suspect it's because we had people in there playing with toilets and looking at things. But shortly after that, the leaks came down a fair bit. And then this is the difference between when we asked people to fix things and when we told them we were going to come in and fix it and charge them. So just before that deadline, the leaks dropped off to being very small. You can't see it on here, but when we get in here, there's little bumps up and down, and that's because we're into this summer water consumption. And what would happen is when it gets very hot out, the cooling towers use a lot more water, and the software goes, oh, this is unusual, and it sometimes will flag increased water use due to higher temperature as a leak. But we can come in and quite easily look at the data and say, well, or even just know that it's been 35 degrees the last few days, and the cooling towers will be using a lot more water. Now you can see we had an issue in the fall. So I don't remember what the issue was, but we had a mechanical problem that we eventually identified. We had, I think it was a boiler that was blowing water down the drain continuously. And you can see it was getting worse and worse. Once we fixed it, it dropped right off and we're back to very little leaks.
So the main use of the flood monitors is to monitor for floods, obviously. But we also use them for troubleshooting because, as you can see here, we've got a box with 6 monitors in it, and they're all hooked up to wires. And each one of these wires runs to a thermocouple that measures the temperature of various different pipes on this little bit of plumbing here. And what we're looking at is 2 mixing valves that mix hot and cold water in our building to supply domestic hot water at the proper temperature. These valves can be quite problematic. And what we found is that if we monitor the temperature of the inputs and outputs over time, it allows us to make sure that they're running properly, identify when they're not, and make adjustments to get them to the point where they are working where they should be. We've also used them in a few other cases where we were attempting to troubleshoot issues with hot water.
So I'm back in my office now, and having showed you how we use the flood monitors in some cases as essentially wireless portable data loggers for logging temperature on things around the building, including our mixing valves. I'm going to flip around here and show you a little bit on my computer so that you can see the data that we get from those monitors. So Alert Labs, I don't think I've mentioned the name, but Alert Labs is the name of the company that has provided us with this equipment. They have a software dashboard that lets you go in and monitor things, set things up, review data. It stores data for years, literally. And we're going to have a look at the temperature graphs that we get from those 6 monitors that we have connected up to our mixing valves. So we essentially get, what we're going to look at here is a chart of normal operation with over 24 hours. This is a view of my computer screen, and we essentially have 6 lines that represent the temperature from the 6 different sensors over a 24-hour period. The bottom 2 lines are the cold water coming in, the top 2 lines are the hot water coming in, and through the middle we've got 2 lines that represent the temperature of the mixed water going out to units. Now, this is sort of normal operation. You can see the cold water coming in increases a little bit on the left during the afternoon, and even more so on the right side of this chart, which is actually the overnight hours. This is normal, and it's because in a building, any large multi-residential building, typically hot water is circulated around and past all of the units so that it's always available. Some of that hot water gets mixed back into the cold water feed of the mixing valves, and when there's very low flow, because there's hot water mixed in, it means the temperature is increasing. But we can look at this and say, yeah, everything's working the way it should. Now, in some cases, things aren't working the way it should. I'm just going to scroll down to another screen capture of something that wasn't working so well. And you can see here that we've got the cold water inputs that peak a great deal. The hot water are dropping. There's all sorts of lines going up and down in different directions. I don't recall specifically what the issue was when we ran into this, but it is clear that there's some sort of problem. Something isn't working the way it should, and it allows us to go and look into it further and make adjustments and get to a point where we get back to seeing a normal operation, normal temperatures, and then we know that we've got things working again.